The Nextruder is a fiddly bugger unless you ignore the instructions. If you're planning to build one, you may want to keep watching. Oh. Wow, this is a tricky little bugger. Forget using this.
I've got a bite on the schnozzle.
We're building the Nextruder today. We're going to assemble the idler, we're going to put together the motor and the planetary gearbox, and then we're going to mount the Nextruder and the fan onto the XY gantry. I'm Chris. Welcome to Coding with My Dogs. It's time for us to get a bit idle. You know, idler assembly. Okay, we're building the Nextruder idler assembly. So yes, we've got these two idler lever printed parts. We've got a couple of little bearings here, a couple of rods, a little spacer, tubular spacer here, and one screw. We basically need to put those two bearings into this idler part here. So one of these is the lower idler lever and one of them is the upper idler lever. And how do we orient it? Let's just have a look at those two pieces there. Okay, so the B part has got this recessed hole there for the screw head. The A part does not have that at all. It's just a flat surface. So that's how we can tell them apart. So we're taking the A part here, putting that flat surface down, put in the two bearings here, and the rods into those here and here. So we place that there like so. So first step is to place the bearings in place. And taking our little pins, carefully place those through. I think that's seated. So making sure that they can turn, which they can. Now the bearings are in place. We are putting the B parts of the idler on top here, closing it up over those bearings. We put that screw into place. Do not over tighten it, and we need to then make sure that these bearings can still run freely. We then take the upper part and then need to close over the top of those, and then we are going to secure it with the screw through here. Very nice. doesn't need to be over tightened. We want these to be able to run freely. Which they can do. Very nice. And now finally for this step, we're putting this tubular spacer in here. And it says that it will still stick out a little bit here and needs to be flush with the surface here. So let's do that. It needs to go in this side and it needs to end up flush with this side. So we can just leave this flat against the work surface to deal with that. And that's perfect. Job done. Okay, so now we are preparing the Nextruder body itself. So for this, we need these parts. We've got this heat sink. We've got a motor cover. We've got the planetary gear assembly and the ring that goes around the planetary gear assembly. And then we've got this part that will assist in fitting that planetary gear assembly. And we are also taking the extruder motor, one of these pancake stepper motors, and a little washer and a threaded set screw. Okay, so first up here, we are carefully placing that washer onto the shaft of the motor. Basically, I would imagine that just gives it a little bit of a standoff against the bearing that fits around this. And then we're fitting the heatsink over the top of the motor, just placing it there at the moment, no screws. Then orienting this main plate onto the heatsink like so with a cutout here. Okay, so we take this little washer, take our extruder motor, that goes over the shaft, and just sits down there, like so. It's a little magnetic, but it'll settle. We take the heatsink. It's got these various cables on it for, I guess that's like the strain gauge that can detect when it's pressing the bed. The other one is, I don't know, maybe a thermistor or something. We'll find out later. Take our motor with the cables pointing out this way. Take this, and that goes over the top of it like this. So it's telling us to use this tool to locate this part of the planetary gear assembly, holding it all in place. It's telling us this needs to be done very carefully. We need to make sure decent alignment of these teeth into the outer ring. Just showing how it fits on like so. Now, there's a lot of comments regarding this section. What these comments seem to be generally saying is that probably the instructions for this were made for the Mark IV, which was the first one of the Prusas to use this extruder assembly. But they think that actually the tolerances have loosened up a little bit since then. So actually, where that was quite a snug fit, for the Core One, it's not so snug a fit, and therefore this step here, where it says you just like put it in here and then hold it in place as you move it towards the stepper motor and heatsink assembly that we just put together, it's going to just fall out. So there's various options suggested, including putting this plate at the bottom before you do that assembly. So we'll give that a try and see how it works out. Let's just take a look at the remainder of the instructions for this section. So it's basically saying, it's suggesting that you can just drop it down like this. And the comments seem to suggest that if you try to do that, the whole thing will just fall out as you turn it over. And then saying you need to jiggle it from side to side just to make sure the central part, you can't see it here, the central part of these planetary gears mesh with the shaft of the motor that comes up through there, and making it all fit snugly like so. So the gear teeth this side, nothing's twisted, and the teeth from the central shaft from the stepper motor mesh nicely with these two gears here. So let's give it a go and see what happens for us. Now the manual is telling us to then put this on here in that way. But actually, as we discussed, the comments are suggesting it's probably better to leave this flat here so that when we assemble the planetary gears, we can push them against this so that, nothing falls back, so that nothing falls apart, as opposed to just trying to hold them in our hand. So we'll give that a go and see how that works out for us. And then we'll put that back on the motor in a later step. So we have this tool, and we have our planetary gears. Very nice little part, that. Look at that. And the idea is that we place those into this section here so it holds them fairly steady, keeps a gap there for us. Then we have this, which is the external part. It has a chamfer, as hopefully you can see, on this side only, not on that side. This is flush to the surface. This side is where we have the chamfer, and that's going to fit over these to assist putting them on. So there's no specific orientation for this part other than obviously making sure that the chamfer faces up. So we can put that on top of here. And now I'm taking this assembly and I'm going to put it into here. It says to use a wobbling motion. Let's try and hold this in place. I'm not sure it's absolutely necessary, but we need to make sure the teeth at each side engage in the circumference of this piece here. Yeah, that's not great. Let's try that again. What we can do is go somewhere between what the instructions were saying. So they were saying to try and insert this part, the wobbling motion like so. And that seems to be good. And keeping that level somehow. Maybe I can take this piece, just put it over there, very carefully. Make sure that now holds the entire assembly in place. It's kind of tricky. And then take this, try and insert it over the shaft of the stepper motor, like so. Just jiggle the heatsink around a little bit until the whole thing falls down into place, like that. And that is not right. This had fallen slightly out of the PG ring here, so again, making sure that we've got the chamfer facing towards us. Let's bring that back over the top. So trying to bring this in using that jiggling motion. And there we are. That's in place now. But we've got to be so careful with this. There's nothing, there's no like ridge or anything here to stop this going through any further. Hey, Captain Scrunch. This is a delicate operation. So putting that over like so. Maybe I can now remove that and keep that in place. It looks right, doesn't it? Put this over the top of the heatsink. And then this goes over the top of our stepper motor, being careful not to disengage anything that we've already put in place, which it really wants to. Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? It's the shaft of the stepper motor is coming up in the middle of this. Bugger it. And we fail again. Right, let's start again. So let's try it as per the manual. Let's put all of this together like that. Trouble is, it doesn't want to stay in place. It's going to just go like that. There's nothing holding it in at this stage. If they'd found a way to just like get one screw in here, so we held this absolutely firm, and then we're putting the other thing that's wiggling all over the place back on top of that, then it would remove all of those issues. We're taking this, placing it in again. I wonder if we just place that on top. Okay, so forget using this. That's all we needed to do. Is just let it drop in manually. So it's basically lining up this stack of things. These need to mesh nicely onto the shaft of the stepper motor. This needs to fit within this plastic bit that goes on top of the heatsink. Everything else needs to fit through the heatsink. Yeah, that was not straightforward. But we're done. So yeah, it took a bit of jiggling and was not quite as per the instructions, but the end result was very nice. I think that's exactly what we wanted. And it kind of did look like this picture here, which is, you know, probably an advantage. So next up, we need to slot that arm that we just created, the idler arm, into this section here where we can see there are some holes aligned. And then once that's in place, we're putting that threaded screw down through that to hold it in place. And it is telling us that it will still protrude a little bit like shown here. So that's not a problem. Let's get ahead and do that. So we have our little idler arm here. That is, be so careful with this. That's going to slot into that little gap there. Little shaft that we added to it. So hopefully, yeah, that just fits in like so. And we can take our little 25mm screw that's just got that little hex cut out in the top of it there. That should, hopefully, this is lined up correctly. Which it isn't. Should, yeah, finally go through the side of that idler arm. We do not want to do this up tight. Let's get our little Allen key in. And just to the point where it's there, it doesn't need to stop this arm from moving. And now we've at least got something that is holding this assembly together, so it's not going to fall apart. And then for this step, we need the front case for the Nextruder. We need 3 screws. We need some lubricant grease. And we need something to wipe the grease up with. Oh, and we need the end of a zip tie just to use to apply the grease. And yeah, so we're doing this. We're just spreading some grease on around these central cogs and then around the outside of this planetary gear ring. Having done that, we need to wipe off any excess grease from this surface. So we're just taking some of our Prusa grease here, using a zip tie. We're just going to try and spread it gently and the edge of the planetary gear assembly. Like so. Just a little bit at a time. Some onto the cogs themselves. You never want too much, but you don't want too little either. Just have to visually judge. A little bit more around here. And this side as well. Just remove any excess from the surface here. And we should be good. And then we're attaching this front plate, and it has just 3 bolts because that's where the that screw went through for our idler lever. So let's bash in some screws for that. So we've got our plate here to go on top. It's only got 3 screw holes. Obviously in this corner, it's got a little gap for that screw that we put in for the idler assembly. So that goes, obviously, there's only one way around this can go. It goes like so. We'll put our 3 screws in place to make sure they're all seated, which they are nicely by the looks of things. So we're going to screw these in, but we aren't going to tighten them completely at the moment. And that looks good. Now we are preparing the idler swivel. So it's got these 3 little plastic parts, the idler swivel and the idler nut, various screws and springs and spacers and nylock nuts. So just putting the screw through one of those arms, putting the spacer over the top of it, and then I would imagine, so yeah, we put the other side on and then we attach the nylock nut here. And it says tighten just lightly because this needs to be able to turn. Orienting it like this, so the screw heads this side, nylock nuts pointing away from us, we put this nut in place, and it has the protruding bulbous part of it sticking upwards like so. And then we're going to put another screw through there, I would imagine. Yep. And then nylock nut onto the end of that one. And again, do not over tighten, because this bit here needs to be able to move up and down. This final part, we're getting these two 30mm screws, putting the springs over the top of them. These are now going into the Nextruder assembly through this protrusion at the end. And then we're fitting this arm onto the end of that with the nut facing this piece. And then we're putting these screws through just to the point where the heads start to show there but don't protrude. So exactly like shown here. So this is the idler swivel part. So there's our screw. There's our spacer. It's going through here. And then our spacer's going over the top. Like that. And as expected, we're taking the other side of this little arm, sliding it over the top there. And we secure this with one of our favourite little nylock nuts. Put that roughly on to start. So it says tighten it just lightly. The spacer must rotate freely. And then do up the screw from the other side. Make sure they stay aligned. I think that's done up a bit too tight. Let's just loosen that a sec. Yeah, it could still spin, so that's fine. So making sure that we place this way round with that little nylock nut that side. We then take our idler spinner nut, and that goes in between the two prongs here somehow. Like that. And then the same deal. We've got a round head 20 screw going through there. Like that. The other nylock nut goes over the top of that, and again, we do not want to over tighten it because this needs to be able to twist like so. That's about fine as it is. Okay, so we are putting these springs onto these screws if we can. A bit reluctant, but there we go. That's one done. And that's the two of those. So these are going through the holes here inside of our Nextruder assembly. And it says we want to put this lever needs to go on the other side. Let's check the orientation. So the lever is going on like this. And then the heads of these screws need to come just to the point where they don't quite protrude from this part here. So let's do that. Let's get the two screws in place. Like so. Hold that in place. Let's get the first of the screws starting to go in. Do the second screw just to make sure it's not twisted. You can hopefully see that it's starting to come up through the channels there. Almost there. Maybe just like one turn each more. Very, very close to being on the face. Let's just double check the drawing. This is quite a tight fit, actually. It should spring. Like so. Guess it'll loosen up over time. That's our little idler clamp or whatever it gets called. In place and looking good.
So the main housing of the Nextruder is pretty much complete now, and we need to start getting ready to put it into the body. So this next step, we are taking the NTC thermistor and this little grub screw. The thermistor gets inserted into the heatsink here, and the grub screw gets put in through this little hole here. Not this one, that's where the filament goes through, but this one here.
So here's our little thermistor. With this Nextruder assembly upside down, this part of the heatsink, it's going in here. And the hole for the grub screw is there. Need to poke that through. I think it just needs to be embedded. It certainly doesn't want to come out. It needs to be within the assembly like that. Take this tiniest of grub screws. This is definitely carpet fodder. Slightest mistake and that's going to go pinging across onto the carpet and I'll never find it again. So let's put it in there. Just use my finger to hold it in place. Uh-oh. This Allen key does not want to go into it. That's slightly worrying. I don't know if the screw is slightly misformed, but this is the smallest Allen key and it does not fit. Let me see if I've got some other Allen keys around. T3 maybe. I think that's got it, the T5. Let's stick it in like so. You do not want to over tighten this, and suggesting that I use the short end of the Allen key for this, but obviously if I'm using a screwdriver I could put a lot of pressure onto this if I wasn't careful, so I'd better be careful. That's there. That is secure. I think we can call that a win.
And now we're ready to actually mount it onto the XY gantry. So we need to take these 3 threaded spacers, some screws, and we need to protect the bed of the printer. It suggests using a box, but I've got a bit of bubble wrap to use for that. And then this is quite straightforward. These 3 inserts go into the Nextruder carriage like so. We're then taking the Nextruder itself, placing it onto these 3, and then putting the 3 screws through the heatsink assembly and into that, into those spaces on the back plate. So let's do that.
Okay, so now we need to fit those 3 little standoffs here, here, and here, I believe. Let me just double check. So the top one is in the top corner. The bottom one is directly below it, so it's not in that sticking out bit. It's this one here, not this one. And these are going to screw in by hand, which is interesting. There goes one. And the last one is between the ones that we used to attach this in the first place. So it says tighten firmly. How am I supposed to do that? Finger tighten, or what we expected to use? Some sort of tool on them. I'm going to go with finger tight for the moment because these are nylon. If I try and put like a socket over the top of them and tighten them, it's likely to just rip them apart. So hopefully that's going to be enough. Just using one screwdriver here to locate this into the nylon space of the other side. And then I can bring a screw through on the bottom one and get that in place. Then this middle one. And then finally this top one. Okay. Despite locating it with the screwdriver, it won't go in. Oh, in fact, that one's not in either. What the hell? Ooh, I put it in the wrong place. So this is not actually where it's supposed to go. Maybe read the instructions more carefully. So that actually goes through the center here. And this one goes into here, hopefully.
Right. So yeah, I should have read the instructions a bit more thoroughly for where those screws actually went. But next up, we need to install this hot end fan, which goes straight onto the front of that heatsink. It's got this cable clip that goes with it, and we need a couple of screws, the M318 screws and the 4RT screws. And so, yeah, the hot end fan is attached with those two M318 screws, and we need to make sure that the fan cable comes out to the bottom left like so, and also that the label on the fan is on the back, so the bit that faces us does not have a label.
Okay, so we have a hot end fan. We want the cable to be coming out this corner, and the side with the sticker on goes towards the back. That's going to go over the top of here. We're securing in top and bottom here with the M318 screws. Let's put one through to start us off. And again, it's warning not to over tighten this because you could easily crack the fan itself. That's enough. Same again for the bottom here. Let's just roll this back a little bit so I can fit my screwdriver in. Just finger tight, really. That should be enough.
And now we need to get this cable guide in place. So we feed the cables through here. We need to route the fan cable around and to the back of the fan and the heatsink like that. There's like some threaded inserts here and here. I wonder if they have to be kept clear. But anyway, yeah, so that goes around the back, and then we put in screws here and here in this fashion.
Okay, so last step, we've got this little cable holder clip here. We are taking these two cables and there's two sides to the clip. Let me just check which side they're supposed to be in. Yeah, they're supposed to be in the front part here, so let's get them in there like so. Maybe let's put thermistor cable in first, because this one kind of locks it in place then. Hopefully. Guiding the fan cables underneath the fan like so. Oh, this is very random. I can't even see where it's supposed to go. There's a hole there, and a hole down there, so that's where we're going to screw into. Let's use the screwdriver again to guide this in place. Wow, this is a tricky little bugger. It's got to go sort of sideways in, so I can't even use the screwdriver here. Huh. Let's just try it without the cables, so I can see how it's supposed to go. Okay, so it goes to that location there. Let's try and remember that. Hold it in with the screwdriver at the top, getting our bottom screw in. Just lightly to start off with. And then our top screw. Okay, that's enough. Okay, job done.
So yes, that's the Nextruder mounted on the XY gantry. What is this? Very hairy travel pillow. Come here. Come on. Oh, for goodness sake. That's the Nextruder assembly mounted. We built the idler, we put together the planetary gearbox and the motor, not without some strife, and then we mounted the whole thing to the XY gantry along with the hot end fan. If you found this helpful, please give it a like or leave a comment. The feedback really helps me to keep going. And if you want to see more building, coding, or general technical tinkering, why not hit subscribe? Next time I'll be completing the Nextruder assembly. The part cooling fan, the love board, the actual hot end and nozzle, and various tubes and cables. Stick around for more fun and games. And, as always, thanks for watching.
Who's this guy? Captain Scrunch. Hello, Captain Scrunch. I am Funny Oven Glove Guy. I'm going to bite you on the schnozzle. Oh, Captain Scrunch. You've been out in the rain, haven't you? Okay, bye-bye.